Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon from the Ionic Academy. Welcome to this video, welcome to Ionic, and welcome to the Simonics community. In this video, I want to show you all the basics that you need to build great Ionic applications, because this is what this channel and the Ionic Academy is all about. So today I will show you the first steps with Ionic 6, the latest version, the greatest version so far of Ionic. And we will not only do the basics, we will really go through everything. We will set up a new project. We're gonna inspect the architecture and the files in the project. We're gonna get into routing. We're gonna get into API calls, and we, in the end, even implement a logic to use infinite scroll with Ionic. So really a full tutorial about all the basics that you need to get started and to take your first steps in a real Ionic project. Before we actually get into the video, quick discount alert, because this week the Ionic Academy, my online school to help you with everything Ionic, turns 5. And to celebrate this, I'm bringing back the initial launch discount that I had back then, which means $6 per month off the regular price, which brings the Ionic Academy to $19 per month. Go check it out using the link below with the code 5YearsAcademy. It's already included in the link, and you can directly check out the monthly subscription to get access to the full library of video courses, templates, resources, quick wins, our community, everything for less than $1 per month. I don't know why I do this, but I really wanted to celebrate this week, so that's my offer for you this month. Anyway, we got a lot to do, and I think it's best if we now directly dive into this. So roll the intro, and then let's create an epic Ionic 6 application. Alright, so let's get started with Ionic. If you haven't set up your environment before, simply because you haven't used Ionic or you haven't used it in a long time, you should check out the environment setup from the Ionic team. Most importantly, you need Node.js installed and npm. So my Node version is, what's my Node version? 14, and my npm version doesn't matter too much. Node is actually more important, is 6 point whatever. So make sure you got this in place. Once you get that, you can install the Ionic CLI. So in the past, it was just an Ionic package. Now it is the @Ionic CLI package that you need to install. So probably you need to uninstall Ionic if you come from a very old version, but hopefully you just need the latest version. And then we can get started with a blank new Ionic application that I already generated using this command. Ionic start means start a new project, followed by the name of your app. You can of course change this at a later point. A template of your application, so blank just represents one page without any other information. As a beginner, I would always recommend this so you understand how the routing works. And then in our tutorials, we're using -- type Angular to use Angular as our JavaScript framework. You could also use it with Vue, you could use it with React, vanilla JavaScript, you could use different layouts like a tab bar or a side menu, but I would really recommend this for a later point and not do this when you're just starting out. So once you are inside your project, you can navigate into it, just change directory into your new created directory, and then simply run ionic serve, which will bring up the Ionic preview live reload on port 8100. So this will just take a second. Meanwhile, we will try and inspect a few of the files in our folder. So maybe I'm gonna do this sidebar to the other side because I feel that my head will be blocking this. So let's do it like this. Also, we should now have our app ready. And by default, you might navigate to this just using your browser URL. I always recommend you open the developer tools and the device preview, which allows us to see our application here on iOS, and we could easily change this to an Android version and then refresh, and we'll see we automatically get a different layout for Android. More about that later. For now, I'll just stick to iPhone. Okay, so let's take a look. This dot folder is just from Angular, it's not important. Node module contains a lot of the default things that we install in our project defined by the package JSON. So these are packages just like Maven for Java, like Cocoa Pods for Swift, like Ruby gems, like this is npm packages. And although we just have a few, all of them will have different dependencies, and we got the development dependencies on top of that. So all of them are in the node modules folder. Source is the most important folder that we got in our project. More about that later. Angular.json, just a configuration file for the Angular CLI, which defines some path from where files will be copied. Nothing you need to touch as a beginner. And besides that, we got more of these, like the capacitor configuration, because our project is now by default using capacitor and not Cordova anymore. And we will talk about capacitor a tiny bit in the end, but we don't want to blow up this tutorial to be like an hour, although it might be like 40 minutes. Let's see. Ionic configuration actually not too special, and we don't really need to touch this. Karma is for running tests. Package lock is for the actual packages that we installed in our application. Can be helpful, but we don't really need this. Start is a file that I created. And then we got some more files for TypeScript, which you don't really need to mess up right now. More important is really the source folder. This is where you spend 99.9% of your time in your Ionic application. In the actual app folder, we got the app code. Before we get into this, let's take a look at the other folders. We got an assets folder for all the images, fonts, whatever your static assets you want to add to your application. We got an environments folder, which will be used by us to provide some general information. So you could have a development, production, staging environment, and then automatically the right file would be used. It's a nice place. It's not like a dot environment in the server side. So these information, if you put in a secret key, it won't stay secret, because in the end, this file will end up in your bundle, just like inside a web application. So it's not really like a dot environment that's safe on the server side. It's more like a const file. Then we also got a theme, which holds some information about CSS variables that are defined by Ionic. So we got a lot of these. We will use a few of them. We've got special handling for dark mode included as well. And of course, we could change this completely to our needs if we wanted to touch these. There's also a pretty cool color generator available on the Ionic page, where you can just import your values, and then the code will be generated below and you can just copy it. That's a pretty cool tool, just as a little information. And the global SCSS next to this is, well, importing a few of the global styles from Ionic, fonts, different typographies, text alignments, these utilities. Once again, we don't need to touch this, but we can extend this and add more information to the global SCSS, which will be applied to the application in general. And then you can also style them at the component or page level. So that's really the global point. The index HTML is interesting, as there's really not a lot of information in here. We could change this to be Simon's app, and then we would see if the page reloads in the background, because we got live reload. We would have the title Simon's app. So if you plan to build your Ionic application as a website, you might spend some time here defining some meter information. But otherwise, the body is really just this. And that is simply Angular. For Vue, it also looks kind of similar, and I think for React as well. That's just how popular or modern JavaScript frameworks work. The actual application will be injected here in the app root, and we're going to see how in a second. We don't really need to touch the other files. Those are pretty uninteresting for us. Yeah, well, no. Let's just get now into the app folder, because that's more interesting. By default, we got one homepage, which is exactly the data you see up here. Maybe we can even see this better if we go back to Android. So then we can see this up here, blank. Let's also call this title maybe. And we see the live reload changing this. So this is our title area, the Ion header. This translucent is just an addition which makes things cool on iOS. But to simplify this, we can really just get rid of this. You won't see this in other pages. Then we got a container down here with some information, nothing special. We could just replace this with hello Ionic. Yeah, I know that's not how you spell hello. Anyway, this is our page. And in fact, we're just gonna remove that page in a second, simply because I like to keep a different folder structure in here. So let's open my start file. I know you don't got this file, and run the 3 commands we got down here. This will generate, first of all, a new page inside the folder pages, and the name is movies, another that's called movie details, and an additional service. So let's talk about all of these 3 pages. We can now see them in here. And as I said, I want to get rid of the home page. So we really don't need this. And now we can't find the home module anymore. That's because our app routing is defined inside the app routing file, and there's now something missing. So this brings us to the era of routing in Ionic Angular applications. It's basically like a website. You define different paths to different pages, and then the page will be displayed. All of this is handled by the Angular router, and this is the syntax how it looks. So right now we encounter an error because I deleted the home page, so I'm going to remove this first entry. There are also 2 additional entries in here, to a path movies and to a path movie details. That's simply because we generated those 2 pages and therefore they end up in here. So right now we don't display anything because Angular can't find anything for the blank path. So let's change this and redirect on the blank path simply to movies. And that already fixes the problem and shows us this page once again. So trying to really get the most out of this. And I think we don't need the sidebar at this point anymore. Let's do this to the right again. And there we go. Because right now this is more interesting. So we got a path movies and movie details. We could actually directly navigate to this if we wanted to. So let's go to movie details and we would be on that page. Nothing fancy, not really interesting. There are ways to prevent this with Angular. But at the moment, what we want to change in here is that we will be able to move from movies to movie details. And therefore, we're just going to make this path a different path. We can change it as we want. Just make sure the load children here is right, which it loads the module file of that page. And now we got the placeholder in here, which will be resolved. So that means we are now able to access a page that looks like, not like this, but like this. So we could have any kind of ID in the page. Right now I haven't saved it, so I get the error cannot match any routes, URL segment, movies, whatever. If I now hit save, that error would be gone, so I could go to this page. We're simply not using the information on the movie details page yet, but we are able to navigate to that page. And likewise, I'm again able to go to this page, and I could also go to the blank page because it will redirect us to movies as defined up here. I know the Angular router can be really confusing, but at the same time, it's actually pretty easy. Angular starts by looking at the app routing file and then just goes down, down, down. If I had like an entry path movies, I had an array of children, and then I would have more modules in here. Angular would just dive into those modules, into those children, and look for a match of the path. So Angular will always take the first part. Okay, where can I find this? Okay, I've matched something, and then it continues. So I got more information on this channel about the Angular routing. Just check it out if you in the end feel unsecure. But for now, we really want to make progress and not talk too long about this routing concept. So we got the app routing in place. That's good. No. Okay, let's go back to the app. So we generated 2 pages, which live now here, and a service. Let's talk about the service, because that's going to be interesting. The service is basically something that we can inject in other pages with Angular, which provides some helpful information. In our case, we want to do 2 functions in this service. So we want to have a function get top rated movies from an API, and then another function get movie details. And both will just return some API information. Now, to get that API information, we need to inject the HTTP client. HTTP client. And by default, you won't get any code completion here because, well, I actually can't tell you why. But anyway, what we need is to import the HTTP client from Angular common HTTP. Okay, so this way we are able to use the HTTP client. But before we can actually use it, do we encounter a problem? No, we don't encounter because we're not using the service. So let's simply put the service to use in our movies page. And we do this by, once again, injecting the service. API, no, what did I call this? Movie service. Okay, we injected and now we get a null injector error because we're injecting something in the movie service. We can see this because we get the problem here, right here, movie service. So I really want to get into all these errors because as a beginner, you will see a lot of them and understanding them is pretty helpful. So this one means we're injecting something into the movie service, which we don't really provide it for the application. And as you can see, it looks like it's the HTTP client. No provider for HTTP client. The reason is that we need to import the module file of the HTTP client in the app module. So let's go to our app module file, which already has a few default imports like the Ionic module, so we can use all the Ionic components, some more Angular information, the actual app routing module, which we've touched before and defined our settings. And in here, we can now add the HTTP client module. Once again, import coming from Angular common HTTP. And now the error is gone. Great success. Now we can close the app module and go back to the movie service. And maybe let's just try and implement our first function. So this should get from whatever HTTP endpoint, this.http, a GET request, and then we need the URL, and we're going to return that data. If we now inspect the signature of our method, we can see that it's returning an observable. That's interesting. If you're new to JavaScript, observable is like, well, it's like a promise in the year of 2020. No, really, promises, observables. It's a challenging topic. It's about using asynchronous functions. That means if I had something in the following line, log foo, this wouldn't be, or this would actually be executed before the call, because this one returns an observable. You need to subscribe this with this strange logic right here. And then this actually executes before something that is in here, which can be very confusing for new developers. So if you feel insecure about promises and observables, I highly recommend you take a look at the different videos I got about those topics here on this channel, which try to explain really the concept of having any kind of asynchronous functionality in your application. Anyway, we're not doing this in here because this is a service, and this service should just provide some information for the pages so the page can later then display that information. So what we need at this point, we need to make TypeScript happy, of course. We can do this by saying return, great. We need the URL for the service that we want to use. And I think I already said before that we want to use the movie database API. So you can find your API key inside your settings, I think, or profile. No, it's inside the settings, and you'll find this key. If you haven't done it at this point, just create a free account. You can test it for free and request an API key. And with this information, we now go into our environment file. Once again, this file is not secure or secret, but it's really for us the best place to put in information like this. I think this is a public API key, not a some kind of secret API key. So it's kind of okay to use it. On top of that, I want to include two more entries in here, which are the base URL to the movie database API, and then also the base URL to images because they are hosted somewhere else, and that will make our life a lot easier in the end if we really make the API calls. Okay, let's get back to our service and create the actual first request. So instead of using those default ticks in here, I'm going to use something else, and that is a template literal that looks like this. So you should see the difference between this and this. Okay, these are template literals, and within template literals, we can include variables, which is pretty cool. So we can now use, we can first of all import our environment. So let's use this. And then within here, we use the $sign and the brackets, and then we can use environment, and we even got code completion. So we use environment base URL. This will now be followed in our call to get the top rated movies by /movie/ popular. That's simply something I looked up in the documentation. We can also include more, well, for now, let's keep it like this. Then let's move back to the movies page where we already inject the movie service. And here in this ng-on-init with the lifecycle function of Angular that is executed when this page is first created, we now use the movie service and call the get top rated movies. Again, this is an observable, and to get the data from an observable, we need to subscribe to it. So then at some point, the API result comes back and we can log out the result. And now we first time see something else, and that is an error. Why? Because we have an invalid API key. You must be granted API key and you haven't used your key. That's because we haven't included it in here. So let's do this. Simply put in the query param for the API key, and once again using the syntax with a $sign. We could even have something in here. So if I had something like this in here, okay, that's a perfect string. Then I could also use this.foo. So this is not only about using the environment file, this can be used in all the places. So, but in this case, I still want to use the environment and the API key and not this here. And as a result, we finally get back data from the API. Great success. This took us about 20 minutes. Well, that's okay. I think we got a new page. I really like to get to this point. Once you're at this point, you really know it gets easier because now you just need to create a view. You see all the properties of the JSON result. You can debug this, and really it just gets better from this point on, promise. So let's keep this open here. There's one more thing that I want to include, and we can do this right here, and that is a page. So I will put in another variable for the function called page, and I'm also gonna add it here in our call. Okay, because this is a paginated response API, the result. And we see we only get back 20 results. We could also change this, but I think 20 is fine. We got a page number, and there are a lot more pages. And we're gonna implement infinite scroll based on this pagination because, well, it's quite easy to do this with Ionic, and I think it's a nice example. Now, let's quickly do also the second one for the movie details. For the movie details, we will simply use the ID of one of the movies, like here, this ID, and that will give us more information about one specific movie. So I'm gonna bring in the snippet for this. Oops, it's the same like before. This is not an API result, that's actually I think any, and it doesn't really matter, we can also omit it. This will get base URL /movie/ID, and again using our API key. So those are the two functions that we need for our application. If you want to make your code even more readable, understandable, you can also introduce something like an interface for the API result. Because you've seen how the API looks. You got a page, results, total pages, total results, and then you could create an interface. There are actually even JSON to TypeScript. There's actually stuff like this available which automatically generates this. So maybe showing you this. Can we get to this? Let's go to the network tab. Oh, I need more space. Where's the request? There is not the request. Where's the request? There it is. This is the result. Here's the blank response. Let's input the blank response here and call generate TypeScript. And as a result, we even get a more complicated. So export interface result. Here's the root object with page results. That looks like this, even another type introduced. So tools like this can be really helpful, which generate the whole interfaces for you. In our case, we're just gonna stick to this super easy concept here with our one interface. And then we can attach this right here and say the observable returns actually an object of the type API result. And then the compiler complains because this observable object is not assignable to type observable API result. And we can say, hey, come on, chill. This is of the type API result. And that's it. Okay. And then everyone's happy and we can use get top rated movies just like we did before. But what we get on top of that is nice code completion of the values, properties available in the response. So that is the cool thing about TypeScript. You can do it or you can just leave it out. It's up to you. Okay. So at this point, we're able to get a bunch of resources. So let's now implement a bit of logic in the movies page. We're gonna keep track of all the movies. What was that? Within an empty array. We're gonna keep track of the current page by setting this to 1. And then we can also put this into a new function that we call load movies, because we're gonna call this in different places. So just a bit of refactoring, moving things around, get top rated movies, and to this we're gonna now pass also our current page. No big deal, no big change at all. What do we need as well? Maybe we should also present a loading controller. Cool thing is Ionic offers a lot of these components and we can just inject the loading controller coming from the Ionic Angular package. And then within load movies, we can present a new loading spinner. Now, this is a bit different because the loading controller actually returns a promise. So great, we got a beginner tutorial and we already got smashed with observables and promises, but that's not a big deal. A promise is, yeah, well, kinda, it's just like saying, okay, I'm gonna deliver something in the future. So I promise you to return some data. We can simplify this by using await. And if we use await, we need to mark the function as an asynchronous function. So that is a feature that's pretty cool and makes your code more readable. If I wouldn't do this, I would have to remove this and I would have to use a then block, just like we had the subscribe block down here. So then it will look different and we would have to put all of this also in the then block. And you see, for the general structure of your application, it's just a lot better to use async await. Because the code readability is really a lot easier. You just need to know that your code will wait now until all of this is finished, and this will only be executed after this. In our case, that's actually good news because we really want to display the loading before we start the HTTP call and before we finally dismiss it when we get back the result. So in our case, everything's perfectly fine. Then we can also use the movies. And because we will later call this function multiple times, we will only add the new objects to our movies array. We could do this like, we could just, we also need to use all the existing values from movies. So there are different ways to do this. I'm just going to use the spread operator, which will add all the movies that we currently have and all the results also using the spread operator, because if I just push an array, we would have a problem. With the spread operator, it will push all the single elements from results into the movies array. So in the end, we just get a nice array here. For the infinite scroll, we're gonna leave this for later because let's really do something in here. So let's change this to trending movies. And we also use on the Ion toolbar a little color that's defined by Ionic. So we could use primary, secondary, warning, danger, success, I don't know. You can look them up in your environments file and just play around with them or use different colors. That's just a tiny glance at the Ionic theming capabilities. Now we get started with an Ion list because we're going to create or show a list of items. We're going to use an Ion item and we add the directive button, which will make the item clickable. Then we also don't want just one item, we want a bunch of them. And for this we can use ng4 to iterate an array of results. So in our case we want to iterate the movies that we have, and for each of them display some kind of information. Maybe we start with an Ion label, which is just a little label wrapper, and then we put in item.title like this more. And then we should see something. Of course we don't. Isn't it title? It is title, it is. Ion label item.title. Let item of movies. Oh, this could have taken me a long time. Great. Now we got a list of 20 names from the API. And once again, at this point, you really know, okay, I'm off to a good start. Now I just need to do a bit of UI design and everything will be fine. And that's pretty much the truth. So we're just gonna throw in more information like the release date, item.release date. There we go, within the paragraph, and then we got that one. Now, we might also want to format this. Getting a bit more into Angular, there are different pipes that can automatically be applied with the default of Angular. For example, there is a date pipe. This date pipe gets different values like short, or you can define the format. In our case, let's use the short form for simply displaying the year. This is not an Ionic thing, this is an Angular thing. So you always need to balance these, and it can be very challenging in the beginning to understand what is Ionic. But mostly, everything in terms of components and page structure that you see in here is Ionic. Everything that you see in terms of interacting with the data, like ng4 or the getting the data, is Angular. And same in here. Constructor, classes, components, lifecycle functions, all of this is pretty much Angular. But once we get into stuff like this, this is Ionic. So the loading controller, a UI component, is Ionic. So you can pretty much think of Ionic as an UI framework, a little making it very simple. Okay, at the end of our item, we will also display the vote average with a batch. So just trying out a few different of the components. We're using a slot in here. Yeah, getting into Shadow DOM web components might be a bit too much. Just a quick teaser, if you inspect something like an Ion item, Ion header, or anything, you're gonna see that it has a shadow loop because Ionic components are created with Stencil, which is actually also pretty interesting to check out. And they're using the Shadow DOM API, which basically encapsulates them in a completely different DOM, which is good and bad at the same time because you can't easily inject styling. It's a bit more challenging, but at the same time, there's no issue of CSS styling spilling over from your page into the item or from the Ionic item into your page. So they're more separated from your page. But that also means it's a bit harder to interact with them. And also one way to inject more content into them in different places is using slot. Really, I think I got more tutorials about this, about the UI and using slots. Just check them out. For now, simply note that there's an end slot, there's a start slot, and the default, if I don't supply anything of the Ion item, is just in the center. But we can also use the starting slot. So let's do this and use an avatar image, which is just a round image. It sounds actually more fancy than it is. And to use a variable for the source, we're gonna use those brackets around here. And now it gets a bit more challenging because the API result returns only this. No, here it is, the poster path. So this is a relative path, and we included the actual image base URL in here. So now we need a way to provide this from the environment for our page. We could have done this in the movie service, so we could have actually changed all the results in here with a pipe block. But that would bring us into more of RxJS, and I don't want to do too much of that in this beginner video. So instead, we're gonna simply inject the image base URL, or load the image base URL, by creating a new variable on the movies page and set this to environment.images. Okay, so this is now the base URL, and we can use this in our page to first of all use this. Then we then we need to attach size for the string. Let's just use 92, and then we need to attach the actual path here. So I can leave this out and then use item.poster path, I think, like this. Okay, let's give this a try. And this doesn't include anything because was there a slash too much in here? I can't see this. Most likely I messed up at some point. Okay. Hello. Okay, let's go back here. Let's check this out. Undefined. Okay, the first part, image base URL, is undefined. Well, that was easy. I haven't saved the file. That was really an easy one. Okay, as you can see right now, it's kind of looking a bit ugly because it's too close to it, and that's because we haven't used the right slot. We want to use the slot in the beginning of the item, so let's put the avatar into the starting slot, and as a result, we see that it's way closer now to the side, and there's more padding to the actual center. So there's the starting slot, here's the end slot, here's the default slot of the item, and we got a pretty cool movie list. Where are we? 35 minutes. That's fine. That's fine. Just two more things from now. For now, we want to also implement the infinite loading. So that means if we are close to the bottom, we want to add more items. And for this, we can add simply a new component called Ion Infinite Scroll. We can define different things like the spinner, the loading text, and yada yada. We can also just keep it to the default. It doesn't really matter too much. Most important is that on infinite, so when we're getting close to this, we're gonna call the load more function. So let's create a load more function in here. And now TypeScript will complain. If I set just to an event, everything will be fine. But I actually know that this is an Ion Infinite, what's it called? It's called, it's called Infinite Scroll Custom Event. And then the HTML file will complain, but it's actually the truth. It is an infinite scroll custom event. And once again, using stuff like this instead of any just gives us more information about this object. So we can now check, okay, cool, this event just gets has a target, and then we can use this target to do something. Now in our case, we just increment the current page and then call our load movies function. But we now also need to pass along the event because otherwise we wouldn't complete this. Maybe we're gonna do this so we can check it out. So let's see if we do it like this. I reach the end. It's calling loading more data, or it's displaying this, but it's never dismissing this. And to dismiss this, we need to use the event. So I'm gonna just pass the event to load movies. I'm gonna use this here as an optional parameter. So now you can pass it or you can leave it out, doesn't matter, you can use both ways. And then we're gonna use event with the optional operator here, the save navigation operator. Yeah, I could also use the types in here. That would make life a lot easier. Event target dot complete. And we're gonna add the save operator, as I said, so it won't crash. If I would leave this out, we're gonna see on the first load, it would actually crash because cannot read property of undefined. So if I add this, it will make this a save operation. If it's not defined, this simply won't be executed. But now we can dive here and we're loading the second page and we're seeing more data. And I can also go down further and I'm gonna have a huge list now. Well, we're always starting at the top. Yeah, that could be a problem. So let's not do it like this. Just to quickly fix this, how do we want to do it? We just need to not assign the new results. So that means I would just want to add 2 movies. Can I concat this simply? Results, would this work? Okay, that's not gonna work. Combine 2 or more arrays. Yeah, it returns a new array. Actually, I just want to push the elements. Yeah, let's just... Can I push it like this? That would be funny. But I don't think it will work. Oh, it works like this. Why did I make this so complicated? It's actually that easy. Ah, man. Sorry, my bad. It's really, sometimes it's a lot easier and we learn things while we move on. Okay, we got this. The only thing is that we might want to disable this at some point. So if you want to do this, you would have to use something like this, event target disabled, if the total pages of the response is equal to our current page. And we can't do this outside because this is not allowed. So left-hand side of an assignment expression may not be an optional property access. Actually, it's a pity. I would really love to have something like the Swift guard here, if let event, something like this. Maybe we're gonna see this in the future because now we're just having 2 additional lines that we don't really need. Anyway, we got a movies list, and now we wanna get into routing. So for every item, we now attach a router link so we can move to the actual details page. And now we just need to create the path. So the path will be slash, or actually we don't need slash since we're already on the right page. Actually, we don't need all of this. The only thing we really need is item.id. And now this will move to the next page. And look at this. It's not working very well on the browser to go back, but we could go to the page and we see the ID right in here changes. That means we now just need to take a few more steps to implement the details page. So let's move into our details page here. We can open the HTML, the TS file. We don't really need all the rest in here because yeah, the TypeScript file is the most important part. Then we got a spec file for testing. We got a styling file next to every page. We got the HTML file and the module and the routing definition, which is just more information about the route in here and the imports of this page. So every page is a module here in our Ionic application. It's a tiny bit different than if you're coming from Angular, from plain Angular. In those cases, you always just have a component, and now we have a lazy loaded module page, but then you should already have a nice background in Angular. Anyway, let's get into the really important pages, which is the movie details page. That's the page that we open right here. And what we want to do is we want to inject the current activated route. This will give us information of this part, the ID. So let's get the ID by calling this start route snapshot paramap get. I'm that fast because I have used that line basically at least a few hundred times in my life, I guess. Yeah, at least a few hundred times. Okay, and then we can look out the ID just as a proof that we're right. So we're on this page and we can see the log right here, 5 whatever. I could also make this 123 and then we would get the ID 123. And with that ID, we can now call the glorious private movie service because we were very smart in the beginning to create a function to get the information for a specific movie. Get movie details by ID, and once again it's an observable, so at this point you kind of know the deal. Subscribe to it, get the result, and then we get some kind of information. This is certainly not an idea of a real movie, so let's get one. Spider-Man, and then we get everything for Spooderman. So with that information, once again, we feel good and we know we can create a cool view. So let's first define a new variable inside the details page and then assign the result from our API, to this value. So we're ready to create this. This is not the page. Where's my page? The movie details page, please. There we go. On the movie details page, we first of all need some styling. That's very important. Let's use success. Green is also pretty cool, right? And then we need a way to go back. And Ionic makes this pretty easy. We can simply use an Ion back button, inject it without further information, and then we could go to movies and forward, and the button would be displayed here, which is of course not right. Instead, you would put this into another object called Ion buttons. And once again, you could have buttons on the left hand side or on the right hand side. So we're going to use the slot start. There we go. And then put the Ion button in here, which makes it look a lot better. Now you can see a problem that if I just refresh this page, I don't see the button. If I go back and enter that page, I'm gonna see the button. That's because of the history stack of our application. So if I just enter this page by reloading, I don't have any history. I could fix this by saying, hey, the default href of this is actually /movies. And then the button would be displayed even if I just refresh that page. It's not really important for mobile, it's more something for the web and especially for testing, because now I even got this button right here and it will just bring me back to the previous page. Also, movie details in here looks kind of ugly. So let's use our movie information dot title, and then, ooh, that doesn't look good. Cannot read properties of null, reading title. Well, the problem is that our movie is initially null in the details page, and only after like a second, maybe 2 seconds, maybe 0.01 second, but not immediately, it is set. So we need to take care of the case that movie is null, and we can also do this with a safe navigation operator in here, which will prevent any errors with this. And now we even got the Spider-Man title up there. For our content, we also need to make sure that the Ion movie, yeah, the Ion movie, okay, it's too long, that the movie is actually defined. So we can do something, first of all, to display the image within an Ion card. An Ion card is a very common component. And for the image base URL, I'm just going to use, once again, our little fix here to inject this. So now it will display this image because we're using it like this. If I would do it like this, once again, I don't want any class today, we would again get an error right here. And we can now do the safe navigation operator in all the places here where we access properties, or we get smart. We say, please only display this card if movie is set. Okay, and then we can safely interact with movie. If you also want to use it as a different name, you could also say ngif movie as whatever, and then I could use the variable whatever.poster path in here. That's just making it a bit easier if you have strange variable names. Anyway, we got this. Let's also create an Ion header for the card, making this a bit faster. So inside the Ion header, we got a title and a subtitle. Let's hit save and see what we got. So we got the title, we got the subtitle, and I also created this super simple span which iterates the genres. Like here, they got different names. That's just a little bit of Angular funny stuff in here because I'm also accessing the isLast property of the iteration. So we first display the name, and then if something is not the last element, I'm just going to display this high dot, and otherwise I don't display anything. The syntax with the question mark is just a short form for saying if this, then do that, otherwise do this. Pretty simple, and then I'm combining it with last. Yeah, I just wanted to do something funny in this, please. Okay. Below this, we can come up with an Ion card content. I'm just going to do this a bit faster now because really the video was pretty long. So in the content, we could access the actual movie overview using a label and the medium color, and more Ion items with icons. Actually, I think we haven't talked about icons. For icons, Ionic uses Ionicons. So you can just look up something like, what do we see? I wanted to use something like cache. I'm searching for this, and then yeah, at the bottom of the page, it displays cache, outline, or different ways of using this one. You can also use a filled version or a sharp version. And that's exactly what I did in this place. I used cache outline as an icon and another pipe, this time the currency pipe, to display the movie budget. And as a result, we have this cool card with an image, with a title, more information. And as a beginner, I think that's pretty cool to see all of this in action. So you could now go around, take a look at the different movies. Texas Chainsaw, what was the budget? That was really the budget? Really? I don't know. Maybe we should divide this, perhaps just by something. I don't know. What's the real budget? Anyway, that's pretty cool. We can navigate in our app. Let's just do one additional thing, and that is adding a button. We're gonna do this inside the Ion footer element, which is something that's displayed at the bottom of our application, above the content. So everything inside Ion content is scrollable, as you can see in here. If I have something in here, then it would be rendered above the content, just like this. But of course, I want to have something real. I want to have a button that expands the full width of the available space. And when we click this button, I want to trigger a function that I will call open homepage. And I'm going to pass movie dot. Why do I actually pass something? We have movie as a variable available. Yeah, I don't need to pass anything, really. Let's just call this open homepage. Then we got a nice button down here, and on open homepage, we want to open the actual homepage. So we can now use window.open movie.homepage. This would work pretty nice if I use this.movie. So let's give it a try. And it would work nice in our browser. However, on mobile devices, this usually doesn't work very well. So at this point, when you want to access better native functionality, you would get into the realm of capacitor. Yeah, I know we're close to an hour, so I'm not going to do a full introduction to capacitor. There are different videos available on this channel. Just as a quick for your information, no, actually, let's not do this. There will be too much for you, I'm pretty sure. So go check out our other beginner videos on this channel about using capacitor as a way to interact with native device functionality, and also as a way to actually build your Ionic applications for mobile, because right now we're stuck here inside the browser. And well, the browser preview is pretty cool, but you might want to display this inside a native application. So check out one of the links that I will post below the video, which gives you more information about that. And then you will also be able to easily run this on your device, or you just check out capacitor and you're gonna find this very, very soon, because it's really just about adding the platform. So Ionic cap add Android. Simon, now I'm getting into this anyway. Yeah. I just can't leave you here, right? I can't, because it's so cool to have this on the device. So this will add a new folder in your application called Android up here, and you could do the same for iOS. And now I could simply run npx cap open Android, or Ionic cap, or just cap open Android. npx simply executes a local script in your project. And then you would see something like this if you have installed Android Studio correctly. If not, now's the time to set up Android Studio, download the Android SDK, And then you simply grab your device of choice, like this Google Pixel, whatever, you plug it into your computer. You see that the battery is low because you're using it like once a week for a video. And then you simply select it up here and deploy to a device, and boom, there is your application on a device. Really, I shouldn't have teased this too much because it's really that easy with Capacitor. So Capacitor, think of it as, yeah, the connection between your web code and the actual native iOS and Android app. Exactly what Cordova was in the past, but all new Ionic applications by default use Capacitor. Capacitor is part of the Ionic ecosystem. They even got an explain for this now? Nah, not really. You can check out my video, I will link it below, about what Ionic actually is, which also explains exactly where Capacitor and Stencil and all of this fits into the bigger picture. But that's really everything you need to run this on an Android device or iOS device. Just switch out from those commands, the lines, and just make it iOS instead. Then it will open Xcode and you can deploy it to your device if you're part of the Apple developer program. Okay, I think that covers pretty much all the basics about routing, API interaction, using a few of the Ionic components, even infinite scroll. And I think from here on, the world is your oyster. Alright, and that's it for today. This was really, once again, one of the longest videos on this channel. You will find a few other more detailed like this, but it was like the most detailed beginner video, and I hope I could show you all the details about routing, about using a few of the Ionic components, using services, the CLI, how to navigate your way around error handling and all of this. So really a full beginner's guide. If you want to learn more, if you now think, well, Ionic is kind of fun and I want to do more, once again, go check out the Ionic Academy for everyone this week. 5-year Ionic Academy anniversary, $6 per month discount on the usual price. So be fast, it's only available this week. Sorry if you come back in the future, because right now we're just celebrating. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and stay subscribed to this channel for more Ionic videos coming in the future. And I hope you will build some epic Ionic applications, because it is definitely possible to build something great with Ionic for all platforms. I've shown this in a lot of the app reviews. People have built really great applications with Ionic, and you could do this as well. So all the best on your Ionic journey. I hope I can support you along your way to learn Ionic, get better, and finally build something epic. And I will hopefully do this on this channel or the Ionic Academy. But anyway, happy coding, Simon.